Okay, so today I'm going to be reviewing two books. I have The Scapegoat by Daphne du Maurier and Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. This is my, fifth du Maurier book and my first Butler. Spoiler-free for Scapegoat, probably spoiler-free with Kindred. I might dive into spoilers. Timestamps in the description if you want to jump around. So first, Scapegoat by Daphne du Maurier. I liked this book. Didn't love it. I don't necessarily think it's did anything terrible. I don't think it's a bad book. It just didn't connect with me, unfortunately, like every other du Maurier does. This is actually my first du Maurier book that I've read and just kind of been okay with. It was good. I enjoyed reading it. On to the next one, which I never feel about du Maurier. Du Maurier always gives me a hangover. Her books always become my next obsession. And I don't know. It was fine. It was fine. I should probably preface this by saying, I don't know the general reception of Scapegoat, but I buddy read this with a couple of people on my Patreon server, and they both loved it. They're both du Maurier fans too, and they loved it, and I was the downer of the group. I didn't dislike it. I liked it. It just didn't do it for me. Anyway. Maybe I should tell you about it. Sorry. Scapegoat is, I guess, a thriller. Our main character's name is John. He is vacationing in France, and he meets a man, Jean, who looks and sounds exactly like him. They are doppelgangers, essentially. And they get to drinking together, get to chatting, they get chummy, and then Jean steals John's life, basically. So John wakes up in Jean's clothes, and Jean's driver is waiting for him, and then John becomes Jean. He goes to live out his life. He meets Jean's family. He lives in a family manor with his mother, sister, brother, and his wife. His Jean's wife and their daughter. And Jean isn't a great guy, and John is trying to catch up with everything going on in Jean's life and trying to assimilate and trying to do better by these family members that Jean isn't great with. And I don't know. It's an interesting story. Du Maurier is always good with atmosphere. Du Maurier is always good with creating a level of unease in her stories to where I feel intrigue and I feel interest, and I always feel like there's something beneath the layers, that if we dig a little bit deeper, if we read a little bit farther, things will unfold. And nobody will be who they seem to be, or at least that there will be, I always feel like there's more coming. I always feel like there's darker things to come in her stories. And she's great at that. Even if she's writing a story that doesn't fully work for me, I still find it to be a page turner. I still am interested in uncovering what's beneath the surface. There are a few things that made it hard for me to fully connect with this story. There are a few very unbelievable setup pieces, as well as I didn't really connect with John as a protagonist. For a lot of it, I can accept that there's two people with similar names that look strikingly alike. You could mix them up potentially. I can accept that. However, it is hard for me to believe that they look so similar that their entire family that Jean's entire family can't tell that John is a different person. But then also his voice, his diction, his accent, his tones, the verbiage, well, not the verbiage he uses, because it is established that there's a lot of things that he says that feel a little bit odd, but tone of voice, accent, the pitch of voice, like everything is so flawlessly the same that your own wife and mother and daughter and siblings can't tell that it's not you. Plus, Jean is a Frenchman. John does speak fluent French, but his accent is perfect. His accent is exactly like a Frenchman. He never says something incorrectly. I just don't believe you. I just don't believe you. So the general setup is a little bit too outlandish for it not to have some sort of fantastical element to it, which it doesn't. This is a straightforward story. And it's a little bit too out there for me. Then John himself wasn't really a protagonist that I don't know, could fully get on board with. Just he's definitely a gray character, and Jean is definitely not a cool guy. But John was so passive, especially in the beginning of the book, so passive where it was just like, oh, I accidentally said a thing that sort of implies that I am Jean. I guess I just have to play the bit. I guess I just have to go with it now. I definitely can't back up and say, actually, no, I'm not Jean. I'm John. Bring me back to my life. Or in social situations where it's like, I kind of implied that I do want this thing. Well, gotta find a way around that. I can't go back on my word. And it's just, I don't know. He was so, like, he was very passive. The plot, whatever happened to him, he just went with it, even if it was like, yes, you can. You can resist this quite easily, in fact. Like I said, John is he's definitely a gray character. So it's not like it's outlandish that he would choose to impersonate this life, but I guess he was kind of just too on the line of kind of back and forth between not wanting this life, but then also kind of being invested in it and trying to do better by it. I would have preferred that he was either more nefarious and he was excited to dive into this other life. And I guess I wanted him to either be all in or all out, but he kind of was on the line, and I guess I didn't care for that. The plot itself, though, was quite good. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the strange sort of feel that this family had, and the feeling like there was more than what's before us. I really liked that, and there were a lot of different things around the corners that were very interesting. I liked trying to guess what people's motivations were. The general storyline was very good, which is why I say I did like this book, because I enjoyed uncovering things. I enjoyed seeing what was going to happen next, but I didn't care about John, and I couldn't connect with his motivations, and the general setup of the switch was too outlandish for me to ever be able to really accept. I don't know, this sounds like more of a downer than I really mean for it to, because I did enjoy it. I just didn't love it. And it's du Maurier. So this is weird. This is my first du Maurier that I feel fine about. But again, I don't necessarily think that it was executed poorly, except for like the general setup is quite outlandish. I can't really help you with that. But other than that, like John just didn't work for me as a protagonist, but he worked for the two people that I buddy read the book with. So I don't want to discourage people from reading it, because I do think that it's a good book. It just didn't really work for me all the way. Next, I'm going to talk about Kindred, which I loved. So Octavia E. Butler, I have another one of her books on my shelves that I will be reading soon. I'm definitely reading more of her books for sure. Kindred is the setup of this is we follow a Black woman in 1979, 76? I think 76. And it starts off with her husband in her home, but then suddenly she gets dizzy and she passes out and she wakes up in 1815, and there's a boy drowning. And so naturally her first instinct is, I gotta help the kid. So she runs into the river, she saves him, and then due to a series of events, she's back. And when she returns, her husband watched her disappear, and when she returns, she's sogging wet, covered in water and mud, and she just had this experience. The problem is it's not a one-time experience. She goes back again, and she has no control over when she disappears or how she can get back or when she can get back. She has no control over this time travel at all, but she does know that she's connected to this boy. Every time she goes back, this boy is in danger. So there's a connection between her and him, but she's not controlling her leaving or going, and each time she comes back to the 1800s, her trip is a little bit longer. She stays a little bit longer. The problem is that she is a Black woman in the 1800s. She has no free papers, and she is there's a lot of danger here for her. I loved this book. I think that Octavia Butler did a phenomenal job of showing us the level of fear that Dana was experiencing. The fear of living in this manor among the slaves, the fear of leaving the manor without free papers and walking and potentially getting caught and harmed and sold. And then the fear of general danger of living in the 1800s, eating certain types of food that could get her very, very sick, getting bit by mosquitoes and getting very, very sick. And if she does get sick, the fact that the doctors of this time are basically no better than witch doctors. They can't do a thing for you except bleeding you until you die. She really covered the gambit of everything that Dana was terrified by in this time and the different hurdles that she had to overcome. But you also have the fact that this is not a black and white novel. The many, many horrible scenarios that we have to deal with, Butler handles with extreme nuance, to the point that I could see people even potentially not liking this book because there are certain subjects that are so heavy that the reality of the time means that they had to be handled in really difficult ways. I don't know how to say that spoiler-free other than keeping it really, really vague. But one theme that Butler really tackled well in this book is the fact that that slavery or that injustices like this can be so easily accepted or normalized. The more time Dana has to spend there, and I don't want to spoil one of the major events, but the more time that Dana spends back there, the more she assimilates and others assimilate. That's the best I can do. The different characters that we meet in different positions, Butler does a great job of handling their morality, the layered nature of them, their humanity, as well as the horrible things that are done to them or that they do to others. There's so many very painful things discussed throughout this book that are handled with such bluntness, yet nuance and care. It was just done so ridiculously well. This is a story that I felt fully immersed in. I felt like I was there with Dana. I felt her fear. I felt her pain. I felt her struggle of trying to see the humanity in certain things and trying to protect people that she shouldn't be trusting and shouldn't be protecting. But I understand every decision she made. Even some of the decisions that Dana herself made and some of the situations she was put in and the thoughts that went through her head in those situations, you even get to see how Dana is starting to accept certain elements of the life, or at the very least say, this is the way it is. We don't have better choices. And I loved the way that Butler handled this story. I mean, from a storytelling perspective, it was a fascinating story to be a part of. And then from the discussion that Butler had with the readers, gosh, I love the way she had it. I just think she did a phenomenal job. I could nitpick things about this book, right? Like there are things that definitely pulled me out of it. They are regularly asking Dana throughout this entire book, especially in the beginning, asking her, why does she talk the way she does? Because obviously she doesn't speak like someone in the 1800s, but also Butler didn't write these people speaking as if they were in the 1800s. I've read books set in this time, and the way people speak, I've read books from this time. I've read classics from this time. The way people speak in those classics is nothing like, I mean, everybody spoke in a very modernized way in this book. And I'm sure it's a decision that Butler made to make the story more digestible, and I respect that, and I think that's completely fine. But every time the characters would say, why are you talking the way you're talking, but they're talking the same way as her, it drew me out. And there are other scenes or settings that definitely felt more rushed. This is a 260-page book, I think, and I think that it could have easily been a 350-page novel, really filled out some of the scenes and been even stronger from a technical standpoint. But this is one of those books that I actually don't really mind those things that I could nitpick, because the story itself was still so immersive and so gripping and so heartbreaking and so well told, as well as the conversations that were had were so well done that I don't really care about the technical nitpicks that I could say. I still have a cold and I feel terrible and I feel like I'm not expressing myself with all the vigor that I want to, but I adored Kindred. This is one of those books that after I finished it, I did have a hangover. I missed it when it was done. Even though it was such a hard book to read, I wanted to be back there. I wanted to live Dana's story a little bit longer. I wanted to go back to the 1500s and the characters that I am attached to, the characters that I loved. I want to see their ending, and I want their ending to be good. It was just such a phenomenal book that I highly recommend. So there you go. Those are my reviews for Scapegoat and Kindred. I enjoyed Scapegoat. I adored Kindred. Links to both of these will be in the description of this video. Check out my Patreon if you feel like it. We buddy read Kindred and had great discussions there, and we'll be buddy reading Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson this month as well. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon.